So, hi everyone. This is the next Google Summer of Code chat with FOSSASIA. We are today focusing on SUSI.AI, and we're happy to take your questions soon. I would like to get go through a few points before that, and I would also introduce two of our mentors who are joining us here today. So we have Saptak Sengupta here live in the chat, and we have Dilpreet Singh here as well. Guys, maybe you can introduce yourself quickly and talk a bit about your background and your your role in the FOSSASIA community and projects.
Yeah, so I'll start. So yeah, my name is Saptak Sengupta. I have been working with FOSSASIA for like 3 years now. I started off with Open Event project as the front-end developer, and then mainly code in Python and JavaScript projects. And I have been looking into different projects of FOSSASIA. So yeah, that's more and less about me. Dilpreet?
Yes, Dilpreet.
Yeah. Hi, so I'm Dilpreet, and I'm working with FOSSASIA since 1 year now, and I started with Open Event Web App, and I've worked with FOSSASIA as a GSoC student for Open Event front-end project. I work basically in JavaScript, Java, and now I'm working in Python also. So yeah, and this year I'll be mentoring for Open Event Web App and front-end. So yeah, Niranjan. Maybe.
Great. So we have, as you guys see, we have like different people taking care of different projects. We are today focusing on SUSI.AI, but like as you know, like a lot of the procedures and what we do in FOSSASIA, our best practices and so on, they're the same across projects. So it also makes it easy for people to move from one project to another. Of course, like JavaScript is a big topic in all projects. So great to have you here, Dilpreet, and yeah, looking forward to your input. And I see that also Niranjan Rajendran is joining us. Niranjan, do you want to say hello and a few words about your roles and your work here in the community? Niranjan, maybe still getting started? Okay. So guys, we're just moving on. Niranjan, let us know when you're ready, and I'm sure you have a lot of good input here as well, and then we just like include you in the discussion. So guys, so I think we will probably get soon a lot of questions. Just to remind you here, we have a chat on the live events window. You can ask your questions there. For the mentors, you can go to the live YouTube page and pop out that chat. So I'm seeing already Jwalin Taker is joining. I'm sorry if I'm not speaking all the names correctly, but you guys will help and correct me if it's really too bad. So SUSI.AI, what is SUSI.AI? SUSI.AI is a project with the aim to provide an open source alternative to personal assistants like Google Assistants, like Amazon Alexa, Siri, Cortana. We want to have the whole stack open source. So this is a difference to many open source projects that we see in this area. They usually make a client open, or they make one of the components open, like the natural language processing or something like that. So with SUSI.AI, we want to offer also like the server component that actually provides the intelligence of a lot of these services nowadays. But of course, we are not able, and it is not our goal, to make really all the components, because we already see awesome open source projects that, for example, do natural language processing. So our goal is actually to develop the components that are not available, and we're focusing a lot, of course, on the server, and then on the other end, on clients that work for users, right? So this is actually a big goal of this Google Summer of Code. What can we do that this works for end users? right? So our projects that we have, we see that people propose analytics projects, they propose improvements to the client, but I also want you guys to be aware that whatever project you do, we need your input on the server. We need to further develop the APIs. We need to ensure that the skills are working, and there are a lot of cool skills that we can do. So yeah, I'm really curious to get started working with you and learn more about your background. For example, I'm using also like Google Assistant, Alexa Echo. We're trying all these projects out, and what I see is they restrict me. So already today I'm trying on Google Home, for example, play a song on YouTube, and I would expect YouTube is Google. Google Home Assistant is Google, right? So both are coming from Google. And what I experience is they tell me I'm not allowed in my country to use YouTube on Google Home. I think this is crazy, right? Why can I use it on my computer and not on my device that just plays sound? So I think with open source, the great thing is we don't have these restrictions, but we need to implement these kind of features. So yeah, so this means there will be a lot of questions this Google Summer of Code, like how to implement these kind of features, and there will be a lot of agility. So we need you guys to be agile, because like for example, like features like stop, play forward, and so on. We don't know how this is working yet or how we can implement this. There are a lot of ideas here, but we really, this is one thing that we need you guys to think, to keep in mind, that you need to be agile, you need to be flexible. We want to develop things together, and sometimes they take different directions, and we didn't know because, yeah, it just comes up. So, Niranjan, I see you now joining twice, maybe with another device. Are you ready to give us some feedback? We just had a short intro round, and actually, by the way, I didn't introduce myself. Maybe there are already a lot of introductions of me online, but I'm Mario, one of the early members here of the FOSSASIA community, and I also help to get the FOSSASIA Summit started, which is taking place every year. So, Niranjan, are you ready? Can you give us some feedback here, some input on background on you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm on a very spotty connection on my way home. So I'm Niranjan. I've been in FOSSASIA for the past 2 years. I did my GSoC here. Last year I was a mentor. That's it about me. I've been working a lot on the Open Event project. At least I was until a few months back, and then I took a long break. And now, starting with this GSoC, I'm really looking forward to it. So this GSoC, I very recently looked through everything, and looks like this is a very different type of GSoC compared to our previous years. We have a different mix of students. So I think this is Mario.
So
let me know.
So I don't hear you, I hear you on and off. I think we got a few bits and pieces of your work. I don't know, did Saptak, did you hear Niranjan better?
No, it was not very clear.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Niranjan, maybe check if you can go to another spot. I think you might be on your phone. Well, thanks, we got a few points. So let's move on. So guys, what would you like to add before we get into the questions? I think there are a lot of things, but maybe you have a few key points that you would like to add here before we go to the questions of the students. Dilpreet, Saptak, just feel free to start.
So yeah, just to add to the point of SUSI.AI, so this is very exciting time to work on chatbots and conversational technologies. So recently I've been to a conference. It was held by Haptech So they are like leading company in India who are basically creating all sorts of bots for banks and other sorts of things. So even Amazon was there. So they have like very cool things, but most of them, they are proprietary. So SUSI is like open source answer to those problems and those solutions. So yeah, it is very exciting time to be working on a conversational open source project. Yeah. I think you're mute.
Saptak, yeah.
Yeah, so apart from like whatever the projects, whether it be SUSI.AI or Open Event, I think like one of the most important parts about GSoC is understanding the open source culture. So I would really encourage people to like get familiar with the codes and be in Gitter so that see the conversations that we are going through, and then get accustomed with the open source culture if you are already not. And that will actually help you a lot in getting quality work in GSoC and learn as well as coding. So yeah, that should be one of your main motives rather than just completion of GSoC.
Yeah.
Great. So okay, so I just like got into the chat and people are starting to post their questions. So we have different components in SUSI.AI, and we are now like getting the first question. So let's start. I see a question on serverless, but I would like to start with something more general. How do we start contributing to you with our code as demo repositories? Okay, how would you answer this question? Dilpreet, do you want to go?
Yeah. So if you want to start contributing to the projects, so I would suggest go for beginners task, like go for some UI implementation or UI enhancement, or go for documentation. And so the basic idea is to get started and to get into the code. So first step will be to host the project locally and run it, play around, check what part is not working and what is working, and then get a look at issues, get one, ask if it is still available, and then start working on that. Yeah, so that is a good way to start with us. Saptak, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Most of the projects, including the SUSI, all the repositories of SUSI has their README and the documentation. So I guess you can pretty well go through the documentations and get your local instance set up. So always do fork your in repository and don't start cloning the actual repository, because that will create a lot of problems later when you're trying to create a pull request. So that's one of the main things that you should remember. And secondly, yeah, you can start with installing the local instance, and if you have successfully installed, then you can go through all the issues. You can even ping in Gitter channels or Slack channel to ask which are some of the issues which you might help with. And if you also face problem while installing, then also you can ask in one of the channels and maybe someone will help you up. So yeah, that's how you get started, and best of luck with your first pull request, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is a very important point. We have channels for most of the projects. You can check them out on Jitter, and they're usually linked directly from the README file of the project. So I also want to expand this question slightly, because like sometimes there are new components, or like somebody wants to, for example, make a plugin for Firefox or Chrome or some browser or something like that. So, and then the question is, how can I set up my project under FOSSASIA? Well, firstly, we don't need to have everything under FOSSASIA. For example, not everything that is like developed as a plugin for Firefox is like under the Mozilla organization. So we are completely okay if you want to set up something. But if a project becomes like more widely interesting, like let's say they're contributors, you want to share the responsibility on the project, or you're a Google Summer of Code student, like we're talking about GSoC, right? So if you're a GSoC student and you want to get started right now already on your project, maybe start in your own repository, and repositories can then always be moved later to the organization. But our main goal is actually to have projects in the organization that are community-based and that have different developers. Okay, so let's go to the next question. I see here, like maybe it wasn't clear enough, so I want to pose this question again to you guys. What is the primary goal for building SUSI.AI? Is it an alternative to Alexa or Siri? Well, yes. That's exactly our goal. I was hoping that it's already clear, but maybe we need a little bit more input, like what exactly we want to do. How would you answer this question?
So yeah, I guess it's an open source alternative. So like, though Alexa and Siri are good alternatives and we can make a lot of things with it, but finally it's not an open source like project. We want to have as much open source project so that like open source really helps you to grow the project and improve it, and actually allows you to see what are the data that you are processing. It won't be like you don't have any idea about where your data is going. You can actually see in open source project where are the data that you are fetching to the chatbot is going to. So open source solutions are always better. So yeah, SUSI.AI was started by Michelle, I think, with that idea in mind, that we will have an open source solution for the chatbots, instead of, so that if it grows popular, we have an alternative to Alexa or Siri, and we don't have to like use something proprietary. We are not forced to use it. We do have an open source solution. Yeah, so that was the idea behind the creation. So yep.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much answers this, and I have the next question here. Can you tell if we can add external APIs, how to get APIs keys for FOSSASIA, as it requires card details? I'm not exactly sure about card details, but like what is your idea for APIs? How do we handle APIs?
Well, I'm not sure about the SUSI.AI APIs, but as of Open Event, like you don't actually need to. First of all, it's open source, so you can always use your own installation and then create your own API. You actually don't need to pay us. So if you have all the infrastructure ready, you can always create your own installation. But apart from that, I can tell about Open Event that the APIs are free of cost, and so if you host it in the server, then you can use it. I think it's the same for SUSI.AI also, but I'm not exactly sure about it.
Yeah. So maybe I can answer a bit like, so there are different questions in regards to APIs. So if you want to include an external service within SUSI, you need the API of that external service. So let's say you want a weather service, and this weather service requires an API key. You need to include that API key in SUSI.AI. And right now, like the first way, like the easiest approach we did that was we hard-coded some APIs in skills, or we hard-coded some APIs in the code. So this got us to the stage where we can say, okay, it's a showcase, it's working. And also, like when we look at chat.susi.ai, we have to understand it's still a showcase. It's not a production service that's offered for people. Like we're deploying all the time, again and again, directly from GitHub, so this is a thing. And so now the next goal would of course be, how can we make this more generic? So if we include external APIs, how could we allow different people to build their own skills and maybe query different parts, or different searches, or so, you know what I mean, right? I mean, of the API, because APIs can offer a lot of information, and maybe they're also limited, right? So just like when people put up a Twitter service, they use their personal API keys that they get from Twitter. So and that helps to avoid some of the restrictions of these proprietary closed services. So while we don't like say, okay, these services are great, many people use them, and we don't want to exclude all the people, for example, who use Twitter, who use other services, and we don't want to exclude us from getting the information from these services. So this is the API thing that actually could be a part of the FOSSASIA GSoC this year, that we get this as a generic solution. One thing. The other thing is, how about SUSI.AI itself? So right now, you don't need an API key to use SUSI.AI, but it is probably a good idea to get this feature. Because right now, like if you don't have an API and you get like more and more queries of one service, there might be hackers, there might be like groups that don't like us, or that don't like your server, or that try to hack you. And yeah, if you have an API key, you could say, okay, this person queries the server too many times. There's some issue with it. We have to reduce the load. We have to limit these requests. So this could be easier if people actually have their own API, and it could help us to ensure that legit users, they can actually continue using the service like in a good way. Yeah. So there are certain use cases where an API makes sense. And also it could be like, let's say some people want to deploy SUSI.AI as a let's say a commercial service somewhere. So they could probably use that feature, and it would be very beneficial. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. And I see the next question here. Is there any concept of machine learning in the server to automate the replies? This is a very good question. I don't know how you guys are involved. Can any one of you answer this question?
No, currently I don't think that machine learning is getting used in SUSI. So it is one thing that we would like. Yeah. Am I right, Mario?
So yeah, I think this is a good answer, and I think the answer goes also beyond that. Is machine learning for replies implemented for Google Home? Is it implemented for Alexa, Echo, and all the others? Well, they claim that a lot of people are working on this, but I haven't experienced myself any of these AI features like on the proprietary services. So what I see often is that there are things like, yeah, play me a song on Spotify, play me this and that, and it's often very limited. I mean, we are here in FOSSASIA, we are in a global community, and for example, we had this great FOSSASIA social event here where we were singing with everyone, and like people came from many different countries, and so you say, I want a song in Chinese, I want a song in Indian, and these services don't understand it. They just understand the one language that you have configured them. I would have expected this is a basic feature, and you could like already solve this with AI, especially if you have like a huge team like these big companies, but they neither have solved it, and we also haven't solved it yet, but we have ideas how to solve it, and that could be something cool we do over the summer together. So AI is a big thing, but actually right now, I think a lot of like projects, they collect the data. So they collect the data, and with this data, they can later ask questions to this data, like AI. We learn from the data, right? And this is something we definitely want to go in more. Other AI components that we are looking at are, for example, login with facial recognition and things like that. So when you talk about AI, the question is always which area of AI. And for replies and conversations, we don't have that. Because like our data set is also like still very small. So to solve the problem, the chicken and egg problem, right? I mean, like if you don't have AI, if you don't have data, then you can't provide good answers, right? Like because AI means like you can, like from the knowledge that you have, just like a human, you have a lot of knowledge, so you can answer something. So we need the same thing for our systems. So we need to get more data. We need more question and answers. We need more APIs. We need more services implemented. And that's what we're doing right now. So the skills are basically This is our way to solve the chicken and egg problem, to get useful services into SUSI.AI. So we have a way to collect enough data to provide real AI replies in future. And I think like Google and the others seem to be doing the same. Of course, they have much more resources than us, but they also support us here in Google Summer of Code. And we have the community, right? The power of the community. So you guys here on board. Saptak, which is the next question? Do you also have a look at the questions? Which would thing? I see like a lot of questions coming in now. So I think we have to channel a bit like according to what we believe could like answer different areas. And I see Niranjan changed to the room now. You're also here with us now.
Yep. Yeah, I'm on a better connection now. I'm back home.
Okay, great. Good. So you can like just also jump in when you see a good question coming up. Saptak, any question that you think we should go for next?
Okay, one thing I saw is that someone pointed out that we can maybe use NLP in SUSI.AI. So the thing is that, yeah, we actually have some, it's not NLP as such, we are right now using patterns to match so that we can actually match a pattern of question with an answer and put it into that format. Yeah, it's absolutely not a NLP and it doesn't have any of the POS and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe that can be implemented so that we can actually implement the pattern more like intelligently. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I noticed someone mentioned.
Yeah. And there are already other projects as well, like in Germany, for example, and of course there are like also TensorFlow and others where you can train your language model, and this could be one project, because rather than saying we train all languages and everything, I think we could do one project where we say like one language model. I know that for CMU things, for example, there's also like some training material online for Hindi, for example. So that would be great, but it's not our specific focus because there are other projects taking care of this, and we can just plug these projects into SUSI.AI. We don't need to develop everything from scratch. It is often rather a question of how is it implemented, how is it deployed? And we want to focus on the components that are not available by others, like the server components, which provides the intelligence of the replies, not just the intelligence of the language itself, right? So the actual functionalities, I think. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
I hope so, right? Okay, guys. So what's the next question we want to take up?
So I see someone has mentioned that SUSI's data are very biased, like most of the answers are very biased, and if we can do something to unbias it. So I would say that it's biased because the rules have been written by a group of very small group of people, but that's the idea of open source. You can actually add to the rules and edit the rules, send a pull request, and if you're not at all happy about the answers that we give, you can always have your own fork of SUSI with a different set of rules altogether and use it. So that's my way of answering that. Mario, would you like to say?
Yeah, sounds good to me. And I have another interesting question here. We can make a Google Assistant talk to SUSI.AI, though it's a bit tricky. Well, no, that's actually exactly what we love to see. We already started to implement SUSI.AI in Google as a skill. It's not live on the Google like action platform. It's still in our repositories. So this is one thing to start with, integrating these projects, making like our open source AI run on Google Home, for example. But yeah, they could also talk with each other. So basically, this would be a very cool thing. Yeah, to like two AIs talking to each other, right? And I also see Shubham is joining us here. Shubham, thanks for joining. And you can also jump in and provide some answers here, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. We still can't hear you so well, but yeah, you figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's scroll more to these through these questions. I see another question here. Following up on the machine learning question, in the teaching mode for SUSI, the concept of AI can be used. Does anyone want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think it can be used, like, if not AI, maybe, yeah, we can always use machine learning to train the model and then accordingly use it. But yeah, that's something in thought, I would say, but I am not sure whether we are working towards implementing it as such of now. But yeah, we can do that.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can do that. However, here again, the question is on the databases. So we need a lot of data in order to have a real teaching assistant and provide like answers that make sense. So with AI, we're getting more and more algorithms, we're getting more cool projects out there, but they don't work if you don't have data. So we want to solve this problem by getting SUSI.AI to a way where we can say this is now production level. Please, everyone, start to use it, and then like by the data we are getting, we can also improve. So absolutely right. We want to go in that way. However, I think in Google Summer of Code, we still have to solve a lot of questions and a lot of basic things. Like sometimes there are issues with login on the Android app, and there are issues with getting emails back, and so on. So really, guys, it's still a lot of basic work to get things tested and get them run very smoothly. And I also see the next question here going into that direction, which is like SUSI is an intelligent personal assistant, but it can't be used for offline tasks. Should we make it an offline assistant too? What would be necessary to make SUSI.AI into an offline assistant? Chetan, I see you also join us. Hey, is that something you want to answer straight away? Okay, good. So I see your phone is your sound is off. Should I just go for it? If anyone else wants to go for it, raise your hand. So the question is, SUSI is an intelligent personal assistant, but can't it be used for offline tasks? Well, I think the question is just for resources also. So like, how do we do development? Our server component is written in Java. So we could say some of these components can be moved very easily to the Android app, but they can't be moved easily to the web app or to the iOS app. And right now, like we want to focus our development and implement like logic and intelligence in one component before we move it to different components and spread it out in different components. Because development-wise, it will be rather complicated to support all features on all platforms. Right now, it is true, the clients are rather dumb. But like in future, we can move more features to the clients. And also, we could do things that our proprietary competitors aren't able. Think of that. Think of like SUSI as not just one SUSI. Imagine like every company could deploy their own SUSI. So you could like say, okay, I have my SUSI here and I have my data on the phone. So if I have my data on the phone or like my access codes and things like that, I could actually take my phone and take my data with me, and I could allow different SUSI deployments to access different parts of my data. So let's say I'm at home, I listen to a song, and I do my banking through my phone and through the device I'm connected with here. As a voice device, a SUSI.AI deployment, and I connect to my bank. Okay, now I finish at home. I have to take a car. I go out. And then I want that the same song continues to play in my car, which is like from a different company, from a different SUSI.AI instance, for example. And I could say here, okay, access my latest information on my phone. This car is allowed to access my information. But do I want my car to manage my banking? No, right? I don't want that. I don't want all devices and every company to access all my private data. So certain data I can share. If I listen to a song, why not? So these are new concepts. I don't know if that goes a bit too far for this chat here, but these kind of things we will be able to do in future with SUSI.AI. And like Alexa, Google, Siri, they won't be able to do this because they live in their silo. This is just like 10, 15 years ago with Microsoft Internet Explorer, right? Okay, so you guys, I hope you get a bit of insight where we are heading, and I see more questions here. Questions. So let's get into this question. How do we go about creating new projects such as analytic dashboard for SUSI.AI, and what is the process of allocation of mentors for such newly introduced projects? Well, I'm not sure if it's like if you could regard it as a new project because it could also be regarded as a component. So, so for example, like there needs to be a server component, there needs to be a front-end component, and if you integrate this into an existing project or into another repository, it doesn't matter. But I think like we have analytic dashboards in other projects, and our mentors could answer this. Who has like some input on analytics dashboard? What would we expect there?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that most of the analytic dashboard will be requiring is visualization components, which means it comes into front-end web development and back sometimes server-side development as well. So I guess if there's an analytic component and if people are there in FOSSASIA who are good in web development but maybe not working in SUSI, then they are also assigned to that project so that they can help out with the web development part of it, apart from the SUSI components that are already there. So that's one of the key factors that can play a role in assigning mentors to such projects, depending on what the project needs, whether it's a web development project or whether it's a Android application project or stuff like that. We can assign whoever is good in that. Yeah.
Sure. Yes. So, and I also think that like what I always hear from my friends who are starting new jobs at Google or other companies, I hear like, okay, the first project that I did, they say was on a language that I didn't know and in an area I've never worked on before, right? So technology is developing so fast. We learn a lot of things at university, but they're always new things. For example, nowadays, like I meet a lot of people, they talk about Go. I don't know so much about it, but I think people can figure out, and there are strategies to work. So I think the mentors are more like have a role of help you to achieve your goal by like developing your skill, your strategy skills maybe. And I don't know, Niranjan, do you have any feedback on how mentors will be able to support the students?
So to support students, we already have mentors in a lot of fields. For example, last GSoC, some of the mentors from Open Event also supported SUSI, because as a mentor, our primary goal is to not sit with them and do SUSI issues, but rather to guide students on the issues, right? That's the primary goal of a mentor. We don't want to spoon feed anything. So so if that is our goal, it's pretty easy or not easy. It's fine for mentors from different projects to assist students in the other projects, because as a mentor, for example, I am pretty familiar with JavaScript, and I would say I'm a web developer or a full stack developer. But at the same time, I was able to review some of the tickets on Open Event Android also, because I have built Android applications before, and I did have familiarity with Android. So like that, it's assigning mentors isn't going to be a hard thing. We have a lot of mentors who have been willing to help FOSSASIA, since as we all know, FOSSASIA is a pretty big community. So students need not worry about mentors.
Yeah, and great feedback. And also a question that comes up here is, so how do we deal with new programming languages or areas where we don't have such a large community? And I saw like a few days ago, the question came up for iOS projects. We have an open event iOS app, and also for SUSI.AI. What do you guys, how can we deal with it, and how to engage? What is your background? Like, we have a few mentors. How would we deal with that? I think Chetan or Damini want to join in. I see like more and more mentors are coming in here. Or Dilpreet, do you want to go? Like, talk a bit like, how do we deal with new technologies, for example?
Yeah. So for example, you talked about iOS. So we have mentors for iOS. Like last year, Chashmeet, he worked on SUSI iOS app, and even Chetan, he has some background on that. So we have a quite diverse tech stack in FOSSASIA. So I don't think the students should worry about it. We mostly have it covered for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So good to know. I see more and more questions coming in here. The next one, most of the people here in the live chat introduce themselves to be working on JS, Node, for example, and Python, and to make a server run or maybe localized devices like Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone, Arduino. So I don't know if I understand the question correctly, but like it's pointing into what devices can we have with SUSI.AI. So 15 years ago, yeah, we already had a project last year where we had somebody working on devices, on a Linux device, and there are more ideas. We also had Michael Christen here, the founder of the project, giving a presentation on SUSI.AI and showing a prototype. So I think that could be a start for everyone who joins GSoC. I think everyone who joins GSoC should like set up a Raspberry or any other device that they want with some speakers and a microphone, and just try to get SUSI.AI run on this on their platform. We also had Magic Mirror, which is basically like a mirror with a screen behind and a small computer, and we have a module there where you can use SUSI.AI. And by the way, there's a lot of fame in that. We see that the Magic Mirror blog posts are some of the top posts that people access every day. So that would be cool if we get the Google Summer of Code students to start setting up SUSI.AI. And I also talked with Bunny Huang a few days ago. I don't know if you guys know by Bunny Huang from his name. He was the original hacker of the Xbox, and he is like a friend and supporter of the FOSSASIA community in Singapore. And he was very positive that it should be possible even to make SUSI.AI run on Google Home devices or on Alexa Echo devices. So if we have like in the middle of GSoC, one of these devices here with SUSI.AI, that would be fantastic, because like Amazon is selling a lot of these devices often for a very cheap price, and we could like just install SUSI.AI. I mean, I would be so happy about this thing. But like, what ideas do we have here among our mentors? What you could do with SUSI.AI on devices, technology-wise, maybe? Like, how would we set this up? Yeah, Subtax, I see you moving towards the screen now. So I don't know, like anyone wants to jump in? I see like more and more joining here. Izuru, Niranjan, what are your ideas?
Okay, so one other way I think the question can be interpreted is, I think the one who was asking the question wanted to say that most of the people are introducing ourselves as JavaScript and Python developers, and no one is really a Raspberry Pi developer or an Arduino developer. So if that's the question what you wanted to ask, I can assure that we are just the mentors who actually made it to this Hangout session, and there are a lot of mentors who actually work on hardware stuffs and hardware hacking. Mikhail himself works on hardware, and he actually had a hardware implementation brought to FOSSASIA this time. So you need not worry about that there are only JavaScript and Python guys in FOSSASIA and no other hardware hackers. So that's not a problem. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's move to the next question. Features like setting an alarm can be implemented online. You can check this feature using Alexa Android app. It manages alarm of the user through her account. Exactly. So I'm not exactly sure what's the question here, but this exactly is the same line that we want. However, my question is, how can we ensure that this also works when, for example, in future, the phone is offline at this point because, I don't know, for some reason, no internet access in a room that is very shut off, for example. So that would be cool to have actually some integration with that. But we go step by step, also set it up online first, and then implement offline functionalities. So yes, exactly, we want to match this. Another question. Exactly what analytics are required for the SUSI.AI? It's totally new project and more time needs to be spent on requirement gathering. Sure. But Saptak, how did we handle that? And Niranjan, maybe, how did we handle that with Open Event? I mean, did we spend 2 months to gather requirements? Or what did we do? Because I saw sometimes projects gather requirements and they just sunk into requirements gathering. And how did we approach that? And do you think that worked out?
So for Open Event, we already had a pretty good idea as to what we wanted. Because we had the first initial version of Open Event the previous year, so we used it in FOSSASIA, and we realized what all we need and what all we should be implementing. So we had a call, right? I guess you and me had a call, and Saptak also was there. So we discussed, and so for Open Event, the requirements were pretty easy, if you ask me, compared to SUSI.AI to discuss and decide. But then SUSI.AI, I think we'll have to first decide what exactly is the priority here. Are we looking at what part of SUSI.AI do we want to implement? Because right now we seem to be just expanding in all different directions. But in this rate, I don't think we'll be able to get a good project. Because we have a lot of SUSI repositories, each repository doing a lot of different things. But then we should actually sit down and ask ourselves, what do we want SUSI to do? What is the first proper thing that we want SUSI to do? And then do that perfectly.
Sure. So how would you answer this question from your perspective?
Could you repeat?
So how would you answer this question from your perspective? What would you like SUSI.AI to do?
So I would like SUSI.AI to perform some basic tasks for me properly. Like, for example, if I want to just wake up, keep an alarm, or cancel an alarm, the basics. I'm not going for very complex. I'm not going to ask what is the meaning of life, or does God exist? I'm not asking those sort of questions. I just want some basics to be done properly. Like, for example, if I remember right, last time I saw, we had some issues with the client applications, right? For example, some features like setting an alarm or sending an SMS weren't working properly, if I remember right. But then I'm not very sure what happened in the recent last few months. But I'm just saying we should take more care into the quality of what we are expecting and decide what we want.
I mean, I would like to tease you a bit more, because I think this is a very important point. We're getting here a lot of questions about AI. I'm also seeing questions here like why we don't use Python or another language. Once you start a project, you're not switching the programming language every day. So we did that with Open Event, where we implemented a new front end that is now version 2, soon to be released. in Ember.js, but it's challenging. So one reason, for example, for Java was that a lot of search engine applications are using Java. Elasticsearch is using Java. Yassi.net is using Java. So there's a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools that we are using and the developers are using. So which I do this to handle this question on the side. But I would like to come back, Niranjan. You are pointing out a very important thing. We have AI, we have a lot of things, but in order to solve the basic stuff like setting an alarm, what AI would you possibly need? I mean, like you could just come up with a lot of different questions and already cover maybe 95% of possibilities how people could query to set an alarm. And these kind of things we need to get right. So what would be the next steps to do that? What would be the next integrations we need? How should we test this? What needs to be done to get the basic things right? I mean, like as we discussed earlier, we have like some components here, and we hard coded some stuff even, and we're always excited about this new cool thing, facial lock-in, right? I mean, like stand in front of SUSI.AI and SUSI.AI recognizes you. But if SUSI.AI then after that cannot set an alarm, it is cool that it recognizes you, but it's not able to set an alarm. So how can we get these basic things right? What would be the next steps? What would you recommend?
So the next step is set the goals for the project properly. Like for example, when Siri first was introduced, it did very few things, right? Compared to what it does now, but it did those things very well, right? So such a big company, even they set a short, they set not a very big goal. They decided let's do a personal assistant, but let's not put our hands into everything. Let's do a few set of things, but let's do them properly. So that's how Siri became very famous when it came. So I'm telling that we should do this. We should do something similar for SUSI. We should say, okay, so this is a SUSI personal assistant. This is one of the first open source versions of an assistant, and SUSI can do all this also properly. And then our first step should be listing out what we want, right? As the mentors or the organization, we should give the path for GSoC, right? We should tell the students that this is the aim, that this is what we would like to have at the end of GSoC. So our first step should be deciding that.
Sure.
And giving priority to all the SUSI sub-projects. We have a lot of sub-projects, but not everything is important in terms of, we don't need Raspberry Pi now, right? But we want an Android client, Android and iOS client to work properly. So those sort of priorities, deciding what should come first and what should come second.
Well, hang on, Raspberry Pi. Actually, like it would be great to have this project, but like you're right, we need to set if we want it, and it doesn't matter if it's a Raspberry Pi or normal computer. We already have something, and of course, like it also depends on the focus of the students. So I think like if there would be a student who has a strong background in Linux and could, for example, create Linux packages for SUSI.AI, we could make it a priority, but we don't want to have like 5 different, like let's say there are people who applied for analytics and they all do like different technologies and different things, and there must be a focus. And I like this question here: what do we want to have on the analytics dashboard? So I think like these are questions we can't answer entirely in this chat now, but like already asking this question and pointing students in that direction is very important. And I think that will be the work over the next 2 weeks to narrow down and like work with the students, like where and what will they be specifically working on? Because I want the students to be aware we have overlapping applications, and also the requirements like what needs to be solved in issues and so on is important. So for example, to have an analytics dashboard that tells you how many times a question was answered, it is cool, but if that question doesn't really get answered by SUSI.AI, let's say SUSI cannot set an alarm, then it is also not so useful. So we need you guys to look at the bigger picture as well and engage in the project. So Yeah, so that's very important. So how can we define the goals over the next 2 weeks? This is a very important question, and I think, yeah, how would we do that? I mean, we have issue tracker. How would we do that? Subtak, I see you shaking around. It seems like you want to say something. Jump in.
So yeah, as a VC, use that to like decide what are the priorities. So we have done that in open event actually last year. So what we did was actually go through all the issues that we have, clarify them as bugs or features, and like Niranjan pointed out, I actually agree with him. We have to first decide on the priorities. It should be like what it's supposed to do should be done. Actually, we see that a lot of suggestions and a lot of new feature requests comes, which are good to have, but then we need the first thing to work first. So we can decide on that, and we can maybe have labels like later or next generation, where we decide, okay, this is a good feature, we want this feature, but we will do it in the next version when everything in this version is perfectly working. So we have to classify them properly and say like, okay, this is the thing which is immediately needed because this has to be done, otherwise the basic feature itself doesn't work, the basic chatbot or the basic task that it should do shouldn't be working. But apart from that, we can always keep the other features into consideration and mark them as next gen or later or something like that. And then we can set milestones, so that milestones can help in prioritizing the issue, so that this is the version 1 release, this is alpha release, this is for the beta release and stuff like that. So that really helps in prioritizing, and that also helps the students to understand that even though this issue is there, but we should be solving this issue first so that this can come into the next release of the product.
So absolutely, but a focus, of course, is like we have we need to set a focus, right? And our resources are limited. So so let's say we only have a few students, we only have a few mentors, whereas like Google and Amazon, they have hundreds of thousands of people working on the same topic. So my question is often, what can be the most exciting that we can do that gets people really like enthusiastic about the project? And while Raspberry Pi might not be like the thing that we build in the future and we sell devices and so on, but it might be something that gets people excited. So I would like to see, for example, like before we actually start GSoC, maybe that the GSoC students create like a SUSI.AI instance on their on a Raspberry Pi, for example. That would be cool. That would be something, and then they could play, try it out, and so on. So a goal for GSoC is, for example, at the end of GSoC, can everyone in the world build a small device with standard components like SUSI.AI and play a song from websites like iTunes? No, not iTunes, sorry, YouTube. I'm not using iTunes, YouTube. So is that something cool? Wouldn't it be something cool? Because that's right now, Google Home is not able to do that. We would be able to do something that Google Home is only able to do in the US itself. And only if you register, if you log in and so on. I want that to work without login. I want to stay anonymous, right? So I don't want, like, I just want to play some songs. Why do I have to give them all my data to play some songs? So could we do that? Could we have, for example, at the end of GSoC, a way to document and to show everyone in the world how to create a device and how to have this basic functionality, play a song, stop a song, play the next song, and so on with SUSI.AI, and like define some basic functionalities that we want. So how we do that, guys, go to the Alexa page, go to the Google Action page, check out the top skills, check out what are people using most. And this is something that we as mentors want you to do. It is not the goal that you come with everything to the mentors and ask a question, then the mentor try to figure it out. You should come to the mentor and say, I have a question. What are the top skills that we want to see in SUSI.AI? I have here the top 10 skills that are on Amazon Alexa, on Google, and on others. do you think they would be useful for SUSI.AI? So that would be cool. Instead of just asking a question, come with some suggestions. And this is really what we want to encourage. And I see Chetan here. Chetan, do you have some input on that? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. But I see that, okay, so Chetan is typing something here, which says some of the basic functionalities aren't fixed on the SUSI server. For example, setting an alarm. The Android guys waited for the API to set the alarm, but it's not yet implemented on the server. This is a very important thing. Guys, you're doing Android. Many of you know Java like super well already. Why don't you try to help in the server project? So that's something that we really want you to understand. It's not just like, oh, I'm doing this and now I'm waiting the others, I can't do it. We're an open source community. We work together. So if others need help, let's figure out a way to make these things work. And usually in GSoC, we don't judge people specifically. Oh, they said they make this button and they didn't make this button. What is important for us that the project gets to the next stage with everyone's input and work. We want everyone to work together. We want to do something exciting together. And like, if there is a blocker in one of the components, we need to help. And yeah, it worked out beautifully last year. And I think, like, as we have a very large mentorship team this year, I think it will work out very well. So let's go like some other questions, and I hope to get some input also from Dilpreet and Izuru, who joined us here at the talks. So which question are we takes? What exactly is it? I think some are covered already. Okay, so I see here somebody, okay, great. I see like some students agree. I agree with Niranjan. We can make SUSI.AI do basic tasks with high efficiency, to-do list, music player, calculator, alarms, weather and news. Absolutely. By the way, for weather news, there is like a cool thing, 100 seconds news with Alexa, but they also have a very easy way for news providers to upload that. So it might not be like so super easy to do all these things, but we can move on step by step. So people mostly use fact skills and quizzes on Alexa. Yeah, fact skills and quizzes, why not? I think these work already very well on SUSI.AI, as we have like using an API of Quora. I'm seeing like a lot of people who have comments on what we say. It seems like everyone wants to jump into the conversation, but which questions do you guys have specifically at the mentors? Maybe Subtech, I'm seeing you. Maybe I will just ask this question. How do we work in GSoC? How do things work out? I mean, like now you have the students, and the students say, well, what do the students have to do? Like, I remember, like at the beginning, usually Hong Fuchs or somebody from the administration teams has a private chat with students about the requirements. Also, but like, what are we expecting from the students? I think. Like there are several blog posts, but code is the most important. And how do we measure this? Because we don't just want like a lot of pull requests for README files, right? So we actually want to see real code, and we want to see real improvements, and not just like some big library that somebody posts and says, "Oh yeah, I just committed 5,000 lines of codes." So how do we try to handle this? There's no perfect way, but how did we succeed? How do we do that? Sorry, can't hear you.
So one of the things is, like, every year we have a peer review system. So not only does the mentors review your pull request, but all the peers review. So when you're reviewing someone else's pull request who is also a Google Summer of Code student, be a lot careful and check the code as much as you can. If possible, pull the pull request into your local version, check the entire thing, and then only approve it. And don't just see the code, run the code, and just approve it and ask it to be merged. If you have merge permission, I would say don't merge it unless you have tested it locally. That's one of the things. Secondly, I do disagree to some point that README updation is not needed, though it's not the final thing. But yeah, documentation needs to be done. It's very important. Some of our projects are not that well documented, and sometimes it creates a lot of problems. So yeah, documentation plays a very important role in any open source project. So in Google Summer of Code, you shouldn't be seeing Google Summer of Code as just yet another program that I need to pass or something like that. You should actually be seeing it to learn stuff and create your open source qualities and open source development and get introduced to an upstream project. So that should be your main focus. And if you're doing that, I guess it will automatically come from within to like contribute some quality code and not just to code so that you can just pass around. Secondly, about the libraries that Mario was talking about, I think that's a place where the mentors need to be more careful and need to have a check whenever there is a pull request published, whether there is actual code being pushed or it's there like a huge sized image is being pushed and stuff. So I guess that's something the mentors should be really careful about. And also, even I would say that this year we should follow a rule like this, like not only does one review count, we should have at least more than one review, like at least 2 reviews to get it merged, so that even if someone misses something, because after all we all are human, so errors can be done. So even if someone misses something, someone else can review it and then only we get it merged. So that would help. And apart from that, we also have a good guideline written in FOSSASIA so that you can start off with your contribution and you know how to write like proper commit messages, how to maintain a proper pull request and all those stuff. So following those guidelines actually play an important role in maintaining the quality of the project, and the quality of the project is what helps you like keep the project working. We can also have like improve a lot of unit testing, so that like whenever you add a feature, try to add a unit test corresponding to it, so that someone else's feature doesn't break your feature. You can actually implement, every project should have a continuous integration, so that there's a Travis CI which can actually say, hey, your pull request is breaking something, please don't merge this, stuff like that. Even if you, then again, sometimes we have a tendency that we create a pull request and actually the work isn't completed, but we want some opinions that whether my pull request is going in the right direction or is this what it was wanted. So I guess in that kind of situations, it's better to mark it as work in progress or add a label like do not merge or stuff like that, so that by mistake someone doesn't merge it. So I think these things always play an important role to maintain the quality of the code and hence attain the idea, and not just keep fixing bugs after bugs in the GSoC. So I think this should be properly followed and properly follow the guidelines, and then I think everything should be perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Does somebody else wants to jump in here and give a few remarks on that? So I have some remarks. So reviews is a very important thing. So I think we also want the reviews from the students, so and from other contributors. We want everyone like to jump in and just like start. Why not review a pull request of somebody? That's also a good way to start engaging in a project and to understand how is the flow. So yeah, you could check out what others are doing, and it's a great way. So after like some initial days and a couple of weeks, we hope that everyone in the projects reviews the pull request of the other person or in the Google Summer of Code program or other contributors. So we want to build an active team. Like, let's not wait for the mentors who might not have time today or tomorrow and to really like go deep into code, like review your code each other. Review. So we want like students to review their code from each other, and so that's really a way to accelerate the progress in the project. And in regards to the code quality, sometimes we just want to get ahead. So they might be sometimes that the code is not the highest quality or something, but like a basic issue is solved or so, and it might get still merged as kind of work in progress, which is not like it solves the issue at hand, but then we can follow up at the next point. So we are not in production with SUSI.AI, and that is different to, like, let's say Open Event or other projects at FOSSASIA that are in production mode, and you can't just like do something work in progress because it might like break the project. So I have to be more careful here. But at this early point of the project still, it might be okay sometimes. However, like the further we go along the road, the more strict we will become, and the more strict also the more will be expected from students in regards to quality output of their code. Is that something you would agree with, Subtech? Or Izuru, I see you also joined the talk. Izuru, what's your take on that? Okay, I don't see. But Subtech, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with it. Yeah, we should have that kind of things as well. So yeah, we can always follow up and pull requests if something is not in work in progress. But I would still say, like, we can have multiple commits in that case, but it's better to have a pull request merged, or like we actually follow in most of the projects a Git flow where we have a development branch, a master branch, and a feature or a staging branch, so as to say. So we can always push where we feel that the code might break something. We can always push that to the development branch rather than the master branch. And after like properly analyzing and seeing all the codes in the development branch, seeing it in a development deployment, we can actually merge it into the master branch and keep the master at such a position that everything in master actually works. We should always keep in mind that the master is the project where it should always work, and we can always develop in the development branch even if it's a breaking code. Yeah, so I think that makes sense.
Okay, so we are already a slightly bit over an hour, and I want to go to the end of this talk. We can't answer everything. Hope we answered some good questions here and like help people. And so the last question here I would like to go into is: can we work on a project which is not mentioned in the GSoC proposal, for example, Raspberry Pi proposal? Not fall as a priority for the community after all, but I still want to contribute and participate. So can students work on related projects? How will that agreement work? As we said, we have overlapping proposals. Some students come from a very like school-like university, where the teacher says you do this and then you do this and you agreed on this. But like, how does it work in open source? How do we handle this? Because people have requirements, different components, things are moving, it's very agile. How to get students into the flow and ensure that students aren't confused. They want to, of course, pass the evaluations. They don't want to get like, hey, you didn't work on your project, you did something else, right? So how do we work this out with the students, that they do stick to their project somehow, but also like engage in the development of the overall SUSI.AI project? Subtech, how would you describe that? It's very challenging to put that in a few words.
Yeah, it's challenging, but one of the like great things about is today we are having a hangout session on a project SUSI.AI, which actually came out of GSoC only. It wasn't a Google Summer of Code project in 2016. It was mainly the LoClack people, and they were working on LoClack, and then they thought, hey, why not make a chat application? And then SUSI came in, and it was, if I remember correctly, in the last evaluation phase of Google Summer of Code. So yeah, if you people actually do have a great idea, do come up with your idea, discuss it with the mentors, and who knows, maybe it will be taken up. But yeah, so you can always work on a like connected component or something which actually works, or something which adds value to the project, and maybe we will take it into consideration, and maybe we have another great project. So
okay, great. And in the end, I would like to come to another point. The slots in GSoC aren't unlimited. We had 175 applications this year, which is huge. And we won't be able to take everyone in. I see so many good applications, and it's really challenging because also like between the projects, like we have SUSI.AI, we have Open Event, we have SUSPA, we have many different projects. And so they're also competing with each other. And last year, we actually started to encourage projects to apply for as GSoC as their own organization. Not every project got in. But okay, the question is, I'm not a student, I'm not getting in, or I'm a student, but I didn't get into GSoC this year. Because what do I do? What do you recommend to people, and what can FOSSASIA offer to these students? Saptak, yeah.
It seems like a conversation between you and me.
Yes, I don't know. Hey guys, I see so many guys here in this chat. Why aren't you joining? Niranjan, do you have like input on that? It seems like the others want to stay rather quiet. Yeah.
Silent listeners, I guess.
Yeah. So yes, but like, but I think this question is good to you also, because we've discussed that here recently in Singapore. So how can we engage students? So we have plans, for example, for an internship program where we're figuring out the details at the moment. Could you like give a few key facts which are clear already?
Yeah, so I think like firstly, one of the things is you shouldn't get disheartened if you're not getting into Google Summer of Code. Like, it's not the end of open source. For contributing to Open Event project, you actually don't need to be a participant of Google Summer of Code. For contributing to SUSI, you actually don't need to be a participant in Google Summer of Code. You can contribute to it anytime, anywhere. Apart from that, FOSSASIA already has many projects, and I guess as Mario is saying, like, we will be coming up with different other projects as well, so that if you couldn't, like, for some reason get into Google Summer of Code because of limited slots, there is still Code Hit which you can participate. Then we are coming up with new things every time, and then just keep an eye in various channels where FOSSASIA is active, and maybe you will see there is another opportunity and you can participate in that. And yeah.
So and what we are thinking in detail at the moment is to come up with a rather like quick solution for this year, where we will have an internship program where people can get like some like swag and like a few things to show appreciation of like participating in the community to people who join the internship program. And we're also planning to organize at like end of September, beginning of October. We're figuring out the location at the moment, Jugaad Fest. And before Jugaad Fest, we would love to invite interns this year to a workshop week. So there will be some details coming up soon. So if you couldn't make it into GSoC, try out this program. It will be very like a quick release, and we'll get people on board rather quickly. And yeah, so our plan is also to talk to other companies that can maybe fund more of FOSSASIA projects, because it's really cool to see people joining here from all over the world, and like so many in India, especially also. So this is really a fantastic thing. So I think with this information, I'm closing the chat. But before we do that, maybe we go one more round as a final statement here from our mentors who are in the chat right now. Niranjan, do you have a final statement? Izuru, Dilpreet, Chetan, Shubham, any final statement from you guys? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so there's actually nothing more I would add, because everything is already said. But one thing is, don't get disappointed if you don't get selected. I mean, I don't mean to start with a negative aspect, but I've always seen people who are very interested in contributing to open source, but then they would have applied to GSoC, and due to limited slots or something, they might not get selected. But then what is the sad part after that is they completely disappear from open source contributions. Like you don't find them anywhere anymore. It's like just because they didn't get selected, they are like, I won't do any open source contributions anymore. That is not something that any of you should be doing, because see, open source is, GSoC doesn't define open source, right? GSoC comes every year. You can always contribute. You can always, if you don't get GSoC this year, you can always still contribute to open source projects this year, and then come back next year with an even more awesome resume or a proposal and get selected in GSoC. Or you don't even have to apply for GSoC. All your contributions are still there in public, and you will still be recognized irrespective of whether you participate in GSoC or not. Open source contributions are not just about GSoC. So that's all I would like to say. Everything else we'll figure out once we start contributing, and I'll also start participating more in FOSSASIA from now on. And yeah, I'll see you all guys there. So hope everybody who is part of who are seeing this live feed continues to contribute to FOSSASIA. Yep, that's it, Mario. You're smiling a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else have some input here? Like as a final statements are always fantastic. So Dilpreet or Izuru, Shubham, Chetan, any final statement of you? Okay, so I see Saptak is coming in. So Saptak, give us a final statement, and I think we learned a lot in this call. But
yeah, so as a final statement, I would like to say, like, obviously what Niranjan said, I completely agree to that. Apart from that, I would always say, like, don't just try to achieve your goal of passing Google Summer of Code by just, doing what will get you passed. Rather, get into the depth of the code, get into the depth of the community, learn from the community, give back to the community, and that will actually help you grow a lot more in your future. So I guess that would be my last statement to everyone, and see you all.
Okay, good. So thanks a lot for this call, and we have the call at the same time tomorrow, specifically about Open Event. If you're interested in Open Event and if you're a Google Summer of Code students, check out if you can already prepare some specific questions before that you can then post on the chat tomorrow. But we're also happy to answer any general questions about GSoC and FOSSASIA tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a good evening. Bye-bye. And thanks to all the mentors and everyone who joined. Thank you. Bye-bye.